Let's talk stage 3 tax cuts, or no longer. This is the tax cut that Anthony Albanese backflipped on last week, and the sales job now continues. Joining me now is our political editor, Andrew Clennell. Andrew, good to see you. He was booed at the tennis last night. Look, I don't think that's entirely indicative, but it does show that, you know, the honeymoon period, he enjoyed a really long one. That is well and truly over. At this point, do you think we can just see a direct translation? If you're giving 11 million people tax cuts, is it really going to translate into a landslide victory at the ballot box? No,
it's not. And look, I actually predicted he'd be booed last night, because how much does it cost to get a ticket to the Australian Open final? You have to be on 200 grand or more, probably, mostly, and you are going to cop a $4,500 cut to your tax cut. So that sort of environment, you'd expect it. It is always problematic, though, once PMs hit that stage. I remember Morrison at the end was getting booed at the footy all the time, but I do think it is a bit of a different environment, the Australian Open final. The calculation was made by the government, Laura, that had they gone with the stage 3 tax cuts and got to July and given people on over 180 9 grand and people on substantially less, $600, they would have got smashed. Now, you can say, well, you could have said that at the election. You should have thought about that. And I believe that too. But that's essentially one of the big things behind this calculation, other than, of course, the Dunkley by-election. But when I interviewed the Prime Minister for Sunday Agenda yesterday, I did make the point this is $16.40 a week for lower to middle income earners. So if someone's on 50 grand, they don't pay a lot of tax. They're probably clearing $8.30. They're now getting $8.46. Is that enough to swing your vote? Or do you just say, thanks very much, where's the rest of it? And particularly when rents have gone up this year, $50 to $75 on average in Australia, and you're only getting $16 back. This is a point I made to the Prime Minister yesterday. He still thinks he's on a winner. All right, I looked up the average median house rents at the moment in Australia yesterday. They're up between 10 and 13% for the year. In Sydney, it's $750 a week. In Melbourne, it's $550. In Brisbane, it's $620. Most of these rents then have gone up $50 to $75. From July, you're giving low to middle income earners just $16.40 extra a week. So why do you think people are going to thank you for that if they've copped a $50 to $75 rent rise a week and they're getting $16 off you a week?
You've just outlined, Andrew, some of the financial pressures that people are under. Now, the option is to do nothing about it.
But there have to be more options,
and what's more, well, I await you suggesting some, Andrew, because we asked Treasury and Finance for them.
Is someone on $155,000 in Middle Australia?
Of course they are, and they'll get a tax cut.
Is someone in $180,000 in Middle Australia?
Of course they are, and they'll get a tax cut.
Is someone on $220,000
You know what?
in Middle Australia?
They'll all get a tax cut.
All right. It was also clear, Laura, in this interview that the PM has some more goodies saved for the May budget. He certainly indicated that. I think energy bill relief for starters, but there's more options out there. They might have been useful to roll out before the Dunkley by-election. Have a listen to this. Was reinstating El Mito looked at, which is about the sum of this? Was energy bill relief looked at? Were any other measures looked at as well as this?
Well, I've invited you, Andrew, to come up with other ideas.
What about a direct subsidy on energy bills above that $150,000 or greater than? Is that being considered?
Well, we've had an energy price relief plan, and we'll consider a range of measures in the budget. This wasn't the beginning of our cost of living relief, and it won't be the end either. We'll continue to look at further measures that we can undertake.
A few hints there then, Andrew, that there is more to come, but it's going to be at that lower middle Australia. I mean, it's really hard to define middle Australia as well, because I referred to a senior minister. I said middle Australia, and I was corrected to say, middle income, and I was corrected that they actually are targeting middle Australia. So I'm not quite what that definition is. I guess it's, I don't know, median income earners, I don't know.
Well, I asked him, is 155 grand middle Australia? He said yes. 160, yes. 180, yes. Okay. And then I said 220.
No.
And then he said, well, they all get a tax cut. So he was sort of moving towards no. But this is one of the issues. It does seem like, I mean, quite frankly, there's just a lot of spin around this announcement.
Huge
if you're going to break a promise like that, I'd be giving people $40 a week at the middle end, to be honest with you. Then they actually feel it, they notice it. And the other problem with it, of course, is it's not till July.
Yeah.
So, gosh, it's not, politically, it certainly isn't the smoothest or best solution. When I used to cover John Howard, he used to act quickly, decisively. He'd often wait for a result. Like he lost the Ryan by-election in 2001, which was a shock. Then he took petrol excise off. So they're sort of taking the action before the trigger. The trigger, it's a preemptive strike on Dunkley is the way I see it. Is it enough? I have my doubts. It's all about the sell job, as you say, because the money ain't that great.
Yeah, and exactly. And people react essentially if they feel that cost of living relief. Now, it doesn't matter how big this announcement is, it doesn't matter how much they talk about it. If people aren't actually feeling it, that it makes their life easier, that's where it gets really complicated. The other issue here is really how the opposition responds. Now, they're in no rush, nor should they be, to offer an alternative, but there's going to have to be a big alternative before the next election isn't there, because you can't just go, oh, broke a promise, he broke a promise. I mean, there's an argument around today, and I think it's right. Albanese should have taken this to the next election, sort of mandate on it, and that would have been a little bit smoother. Also, I think what was really a big highlight at the press club, Anthony Albanese seemed to be arguing, his main argument in that prepared speech was that this would actually drive up wages and drive jobs. I'm not quite sure what that argument here is, that, you know, there's going to be so much money in the economy that businesses are going to have to employ more people because the shops are going to be overrun, but somehow that's not inflationary. I don't understand where that argument is, and he's dropped it pretty quickly today.
This is a big opportunity for the Greens. That's who it's a big opportunity for. They've already had some wins over rents, and they may as well call themselves the rent party of late. They are able to really attack Labor from the left here. And I had a Greens person say to me on the weekend, imagine if Labor had run to the election and said we're giving $4,500 in a tax cut to higher income earners and $1,000 to lower to middle income earners. How do you think that would go? This is a mess created by the fact that they were so unequivocal before the 2022 election, because they were so determined to win at any cost, including where they've ended up now. It's a bit of a mess in my book. They think they're on a winner. I'm not convinced.
Yeah, the Greens are picking up those inner city seats, though. Really expensive places to live. Also, Greens voters, not all of them, but a lot of them are on higher incomes. So how does that work? Is that a little bit of a skewed effect that it might have at the election, do you think? I'm thinking Brisbane, out of Melbourne in particular.
Well, I guess it's a bit of the teal effect, but you've got to remember those well-to-do areas, they have a lot of renters. You know, they have a lot of young people. And, you know, I'm thinking about places like Wentworth or even Kingsford Smith, or, you know, places like Brisbane. And they have a lot of progressives. So, look, I think the higher income, that tax rate, and I notice you got to Kylie Tink on it in a minute, it's a bigger issue in Kylie Tink's electorate and those teal electorates than it is in the Greens electorate, where they'll be wanting bigger tax cuts and more relief for their rent increases.
Yeah, rents. That's a really good point. Andrew, thanks so much for that. And